Well, welcome. Good morning. It's an honor and privilege to be here. Nice pronunciations of my last name, Spruijt, but that's okay. I'm from Holland, Netherlands. I'm the CTO of PQR. We are a system integrator based in the Netherlands, and I will use 75 minutes in presenting the VDI Smackdown Spring Edition. And it will be challenging. There's a lot of content to cover. Some people already saw my deck, and his response was, well, that's a lot of info, right? So we will see if we can make it through time. Presentation will be available for download. My contact details later on are available. I understand, well, I've seen it myself at the back of this room. It will be tough to see everything, and especially small letters like this one. But I have also a lot of pictures and, well, other stuff to share. So hopefully even the people in the back of this room are able to see all the content. And when there are questions, there will be a Q&A, but not in this room. After this session, outside this room, because I need all my time in this session for content. So when you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, but please save them afterwards and discuss them outside this room. So the agenda. It's not. What is a Smackdown? When I started using this word, I think seven years ago, Brian suggested this word, and to be honest, I didn't know what a Smackdown was until I Googled the word Smackdown, and I found out that it is, it's a World Wrestling Mania terminology, like competition between two opponents, and that's how this word VDI Smackdown or Application Streaming Smackdown came into this play. The goal of this presentation is to cover the essence of application and desktop delivery. Brian covered it as well in his keynote. There are three major questions need to be answered by you or by your architects in this application and desktop delivery space. And then I will do a deeper dive on VDI. I don't talk about the good of VDI. I will talk about the bad and ugly, or the be aware of VDI portion. I will do a deeper dive on storage in VDI. I will explain the landscape, and then I will do a deeper dive on the different vendors in this space. Citrix, Microsoft, VMware, Quest, and Cavisa, which is Citrix as well. So that's the essence of this 75 minutes. I hope you will like it. We'll see in the evaluation forms. When you have suggestions, when you have comments, when you have improvements, let me know. When it's good, let them know. That will help me as well. Application and desktop delivery, the essence is bringing applications, Windows, web, and rich internet applications which run natively on tablets, for instance, bring these applications to the end user. That is application and desktop delivery as a whole. There are a lot of technologies involved in bringing the applications to the end user, that's for sure. And that's fun. I like to have a lot of technology and new technology. But I think technology is maybe step one, maybe step two or step three in the application desktop delivery space. So application desktop delivery is pretty complex when you look at all these technologies and the functionality involved for the end user. A lot of people find it complex. I try to do my best to write white papers, sometimes big white papers, but to make it simple as possible. One of the things to make it simple in the application and desktop delivery space is asking yourself three questions. Three questions to make sure, okay, what kind of technology or what kind of functionality, I think that's the first answer, what kind of functionality do I need for which solution, for which problem? And there are three main questions. So application and desktop delivery, three main questions are involved in this space. First question is, where are my applications executed? So what type of applications? Windows, web-based applications, or rich internet applications? And where are these executed? Centrally, in a data center, or locally on your device, whatever kind of device. That's the first question. The second question could be, okay, in this scenario, it is smart to deploy the applications to a local device, for instance. How do I deliver Windows applications or web applications to that device? Installation, virtualization of Windows applications, web applications, just by entering a URL, for instance. And the third question is, how do I manage this combination of execution and delivery of applications? How do I deliver this from an user perspective? That's what I call user environment management. and how do we deliver it how do I manage it more from a device perspective? So device management or PC lifecycle management, more the quote-unquote old school management solutions. These 3 questions: where are the apps executed, centrally, locally? How do I deliver applications to that platform? And how do I manage this as a whole? These are my 3 questions I use at my customers to make it as simple as possible in this complex space. And that helps me with my customers to proceed step by step. It is a blended solution all over the place. These 3 questions, there's no one single answer on each of these questions. There will be a hybrid application and desktop delivery solutions for complex environments, obvious, but also for smaller environments. Desktop virtualization is a bigger phrase, bigger word. You can draw a line between server-hosted desktops and client-side desktops. Client-side desktops, locally executed, bare metal or hosted, type 1 or type 2, and server-hosted in 3 forms: a shared platform, a VDI platform, virtual desktop infrastructure platform, and a platform which currently today is more like physical desktops in a data center with high-performance GPUs and these kind of things. And these 2 worlds will be combined or are being mixed when you look at the current state of technology and the roadmap of various vendors. So GPU sharing, for instance, or GPU pass-through are technologies which make sure that these 2 scenarios, personal remote physical desktops and a personal remote virtual desktops, are getting closer and closer. Read Brian's article about NVIDIA, for instance. All these 5 types of desktop virtualization have their own use cases. And the 3 questions, the 3 questions mentioned earlier will help with the discussion what kind of use cases are suitable for which user. So forget about VDI versus server-based computing. Forget about server-hosted desktops versus client-side desktops. That is a very interesting discussion, but out of this scope. My navigation system, the root in my navigation system is VDI. And the other stuff, the other discussion like SB, server-based computing versus VDI, or hosted versus local, is out of this scope. It's part of your scope, or part of your discussion, that's for sure. But my goal is to do a deeper dive on VDI, so I will skip that discussion. So I explained briefly around application and desktop delivery, the 3 questions. I think that's key to understand. Now I'll talk about the good, bad, and ugly. And as mentioned earlier, it is more bad and ugly than good. Not that the solution isn't good, but I will focus about the attention points, because all the vendors and all the community and marketing talk about what's really awesome about VDI. And I think it's smart to talk about what isn't awesome about VDI, because that's, from our perspective, also interesting and needed to understand. So VDI good? Well, this is my good moment, to be honest. This is a mojito. One of the things I learned last year is to celebrate success. That's more a personal thing, to be honest. I'm always looking forward and giving a lot of energy in looking forward, and celebrating success is important and part of life as well. And I learned that in various ways with mental coaching and these kind of things. So for me, mojito, when you look at my Twitter account and I write something like, hey, maybe this afternoon session was great, let's drink a mojito, that means for me celebrating success. So mojito in this space, in the VDI Smackdown, is good. What is bad? Well, this is a pretty bad picture. This is not at home, luckily, or I hope when I'm arriving at home Friday, this is not at home, but this is pretty bad. And ugly, well, you can debate if this is ugly. Well, that's fine for me. For me, this is not that pretty. So it is about good, mojito, bad, kids painting on a TV screen, and ugly. So stay alert. That's pretty easy. It's morning. You have some coffee, so stay alert. It shouldn't be that hard. It's not that warm here, so we'll see how that works. But stay alert from a more VDI perspective. I won't discuss all the topics, but I will pick some random, to be honest. So what is good? Ask vendors, ask system integrators, ask the customers who are already running VDI. They know what is good. My focus is about the be aware portion of the VDI space. Be aware, well, as you can see, there are a lot of things to be aware. There are a couple of slides around VDI in bad and ugly. And bad and ugly is not always bad or really ugly, but more, okay, what is my approach to make sure that this won't be bad and ugly? That is what I mean. So bad and ugly is a nice phrase, good, bad and ugly, but it's also around be aware. So end user experience, multimedia, 3D graphics are be aware. Not everything is possible in VDI. That is obvious from my perspective, but the mindset of people from my customers are not the same as what I expect. So be aware of 3D graphics, multimedia support, Silverlight apps, Adobe Air apps, these kind of things in perspective of user experience. Unified communications is be aware with capital letters. Supportability, from Microsoft perspective, when you look at Link, for instance, but also just using webcam support or audio support over WAN connections. And it depends on the vendor if they are able to handle that correctly, and in what kind of scenario they are able to handle it. But unified communications, and I don't mean the presence or the chat functionality, but especially the audio and video portion of that is, well, be aware with large letters. It can run. I'm using several scenarios where I'm using Link, but I see a lot of issues with that currently. So that will change, that will evolve. I'm not sure if that's really VDI related. It is a combination of VDI and unified communications. That will evolve when the unified communications vendors understand the issue with VDI and unified communications and will solve also unified communications in combination with VDI. Like the hairpinning effect, when you Google about unified communication, VDI, and hairpinning effect, you will see what the issues are and how to solve that later on. Offline usage, client-side desktop virtualization. People think, well, I have a hosted solution, I just want to run my hosted desktop on the client side, I'm set to go and I'm fine with that. Well, let's be aware, that's not that easy. VMware View has an offline solution, it works. I have a couple of customers using VMware View with their local mode, but it is be aware. There are a lot of caveats in that space as well. Licensing, well, I noticed that one of the other presenters have a complete session about licensing of Microsoft, so that's be aware as well. Be aware in a BIO scenario, be aware in a service provider license agreement scenario. These are not that easy to cover topics, but it's be aware. Technology stack in VDI is growing and growing. When you look at the VDI technology stack from an end user perspective to the data center, there are a lot of change in that stack. That's not good or bad, but that's just be aware. Be aware that there's a chain in the VDI stack. And the key thing is, what is the weakest link in that chain? Do my people understand the complete chain? Do they have overview? Do they have deeper knowledge of portions in that chain? Can they analyze when there is a performance issue, for instance? These kind of things are be aware. That's what I've seen in numerous VDI and larger VDI implementations with our customers. And the perceived performance is what the perception of the end user is. And it can be very different than the performance what we measure. The user says, okay, it doesn't perform, and we look at the metrics, well, it performs. That's an interesting discussion. And there are tools in the market to handle that, well, not handle, to help with that kind of discussion. But user perceived performance is important to focus on that as well. I created this deck yesterday and a few days ago. Tablets and VDI. A lot of people think about, wow, cool, VDI. So I can use the Windows 7 desktop on the iPad. And that's being used in various demos, numerous demos by vendors. I think that it's a pretty bad idea. And what I described it is, this is a very nice solution when others don't work. And Brian mentioned that in his keynote as well. Why? Because this tablet is created to deliver, well, rich internet applications to that device and not Windows applications. Yes, Windows applications through desktop virtualization can run on tablets. And there are use cases. I know one large customer who's not able to use his legacy application and to rebuild it in a rich internet application format. So for him, this is a very good scenario. But be aware from a user perspective and a perceived user performance around this topic. And VDI cheaper than a PC? Could be. And well, letters are pretty small, and especially in the back of the room, but I mentioned skeptical here. So I'm skeptical right now, to be honest. I understand the system on the chip. I understand the storage impact and storage optimization impact. But to be honest, I'm still skeptical. I will see in next year what will happen in the calculation if VDI is cheaper than PC. Brian wrote an interesting article, how to lie with calculations, TCO calculations, these kind of things. So Google around with that phrase on Brian Madden, and he has written down around 15 topics what vendors will use to lie in the TCO calculations. Not that they will lie by design, I don't think so, but they will use topics which are debatable, and that's, I think, interesting to see what topics are useful for you or are not useful for you. I tweeted about this picture a couple of months ago, and one of my followers, he said, well, this is a pretty awesome workspace. Is it hard to work with these kind of things? Well, this is not my workspace. I don't have that not so much space to handle this workspace, but the endpoint in VDI, although this is a pretty interesting endpoint, but the endpoint in VDI has impact in user experience and perceived performance. Can have impact in a combination, for instance, with unified communications. So yes, everything is rendered and processed in a data center, but the endpoint today and even tomorrow will have impact in the perceived performance and user experience. Look at what is the user experience when my endpoint is a phone. That's a different experience than my endpoint is, for instance, a Windows thin client or a MacBook or whatever kind of device. That's what I mean with this. And the last portion around VDI, good, bad, and ugly, or bad and ugly, is around storage. I will spend, I think, 10, maybe 15 minutes around the storage portion. Dan Brinkman, he has another session about how to fill with VDI, something like that, at the end of this day. And he will do also a deeper dive on storage and tools how to find out where bottlenecks are and these kind of things. So when you want to have a deeper dive on storage, I recommend his session as well. I will talk about VDI and storage. Why? Because it can be a pain in the ass. We found it out the hard way 3 years ago. We wrote, or actually my colleague Herco van Brugge, he wrote an interesting white paper on VDI and storage. Why? Because we want to educate our competitors. That is strange, right? Educating your competitors. Why? Because we are on the same level of competing. So suppose we are delivering a VDI project, or we are suggesting a VDI project for a customer. And we say, okay, we need this amount of spindles, let's say 1,000. And our competitor is not aware of the issues. They will deliver this solution with 200 spindles. We cannot compete with that. So that is one of the reasons for, well, writing down this white paper. Besides of technical marketing, besides of own ego, or whatever kind of reason. And besides of having fun with this kind of technology and writing down and presenting about this technology. So we found out the hard way that VDI in storage is deep impact. And we also found out that there's an ultra deep impact. I will explain it later. So what is the issue? It is the issue about IOPS. Not only the issue is IOPS, but we will see later on. White papers a couple of years ago were stating that the read-write ratio of IOPS was 20%. 20% was write and 80% was read. Well, that's a very bad assumption. Real-world white papers, or good benchmarks, wing to VRC, is 40 to 20% of the IOPS are reads, and the others are writes. So mostly it is write. And even this number, in practice, we've seen 10% reads and 90% writes. That's what we've seen at various customers. How much IOP do we need? Well, it depends on a lot of scenarios. I have one customer, I won't mention the market space and I won't mention the name, but on average, they are using 2.2 IOPS per user. And they are, well, I'm not sure if they are working, but it feels that they are working, and 2.2 is a very low number from I/O perspective. Normal numbers could be 10 or 15 IOPS. So IOP behavior, read-write ratio is key to understand. Other thing to understand is the write penalty of the RAID system. RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 10, they all have an impact on writes. Understand that when you're currently using a RAID 5 disk subsystem, a RAID 5 level of your disk subsystem, that will lower the amount of writes which that disk subsystem can handle pretty dramatically. So using your current storage architecture and design for VDI, well, can be very dangerous. Block sizes and different disk types. This is an HCA disk type with 64K blocks, with 4K blocks, and you can see from an I/O perspective and from a megabyte per second perspective, where you're sitting in two rows up front, otherwise you cannot see it, that's why I'm explaining a little bit, that the block size, for instance for 4K, compared to 32K is different when you look at the IOPS and megabytes per second throughput. When I compare it to SCSI or SAS drives, it is a complete different graph. So when you look at the theory around disk drives, and the vendors say, well, we can handle this huge amount of IOPS, the first question, okay, what kind of block size do you use in that test? Well, we are using, for instance, 64K blocks. Well, in VDI scenarios, most of the IOPS are 4K blocks. These are things to remember when you're looking at disk drives and block sizes. Also, latency is important because latency is heavily involved with user experience. High latency, user will complain. What is high? That is a subject for debate. But we say, okay, 20 milliseconds is the number. Higher than 20 milliseconds latency will have huge impact on the user experience and user acceptance in the VDI scenario. When you look at different drives, so SATA, 10K RPM, 15K RPM drives, you see that the IOPS and latency, so this is 20 milliseconds latency, this drive can handle more than 200 IOPS with 20 milliseconds latency. And this drive, this SATA drive, can handle maybe 40 IOPS with this latency. So be aware that different disk types will have impact when you look at IOPS and latency as well. So we created a small diagram and explained, okay, when we have RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 0, RAID set with this different types. These are numbers, 160, maybe 120, maybe 100, maybe 200, are numbers we are using in our calculations with our customers. And these numbers work. It is an average number, but it works in the calculation. So not 400 or these abnormal numbers with normal storage solutions. Simple calculation, 1,000 CCUs, concurrent users, read-write ratio of 30/70, and 12 IOPS per VM. When I've configured a RAID 5 disk array, I need 210 spindles to handle these numbers. When I configure it in a RAID 1 disk array, I need 120 spindles. When I'm not using the right read-write ratio, or I'm miscalculating on disk size, maybe I bought 60 disks instead of 210 disks. And then problems will arise. That's what we've seen a couple of times a couple of years ago. And that's why this VDI and storage white paper is being written to educate people around this issue. This can be a very dangerous one when you don't have the right numbers or the right mindset in fixing this. Read-write ratio of 90% writes, 10% reads. That will happen in production when users are using their applications. While booting VMs, while logging in on that system, are mostly read IOs, not write IOs. And during the day, maybe after half an hour, people starting applications, people are using applications, the read-write ratio will change in more writes than reads. And writes are more, well, are costly compared to reads. Reads are pretty easy to cache as well. Writes are tough to cache, are limited in time to cache depending on the cache size of the controllers. So I explained about block sizes. I explained about different disk types. I explained something about latency. I explained about read-write ratio. I explained about RAID levels. All topics which are theory and practically. So understand what the issues are is important. But is this it? In small letters, nope. That's what we found out, I think 9 months ago, something like that, with other larger customers. Because there's an ultra deep impact as well. So suppose you are thinking, well, this is huge impact. There will be an even bigger impact. This is really hard to read at the back of the room, but in essence, this is a normal VDI storage profile. A lot of IOPS are 4K blocks. This is a strange profile. A lot of 64K blocks. These large spikes are the I/O pattern for this customer during his working day, and you'll see a complete different graph compared to this normal, quote quote normal, and strange I/O behavior. What is the issue? When I'm measuring my IOPS in a VM on the hypervisor level or on the storage level, you will find different numbers because caching is involved, block sizes are different, maybe disk alignment is not correctly done. And for this customer, in the VM, we measured one IOP with a 240K block. This customer was using HDS, Hitachi Data System storage, and there is nothing wrong with that storage. But this storage system handles or wants to receive 4K blocks. And then an issue will arrive. Because one IOP is, for instance, 400K. That is possible as well. So that's one IOP. What's the issue? But on a storage level, it is 100 IOPs. Because the storage system wants to receive 4K blocks. Controllers are overwhelmed with information, making sure that the 400K blocks are chunked in 4K blocks. And that is a pretty tough one to calculate. So be aware of this issue. What was the issue? A lot of customers in a certain amount of time were using YouTube. And YouTube was buffering, and creating 400K or 240K blocks in this storage system. So this profile. And this storage platform couldn't handle it. Controllers were overwhelmed, spindles were not enough. Because to be honest, we didn't calculate this huge storage impact as well in the complete story. So be aware of this ultra deep impact as well. It is written down in a white paper mentioned before. Be aware that it's not only 4K blocks, 400K blocks or multiple 400K blocks are part of this VDI stack. So BAM, that's a deep impact. VDI in storage is deep impact. Understand what the impact is. Understand the theory before you do a larger deployment, larger architecture of VDI. That's my main message in this VDI space. I hope you understand why it is important. I can talk for hours around solution directions in storage. I won't do that. I don't have the time for that. But in essence, these are the main directions how to solve VDI and storage. Buying more spindles could be an option. Minimize IOPS, always a good option. Always good to minimize IOPS. Cache where possible, and especially read cache. Boot storms, antivirus when you're using antivirus during production hours. Log-on storms, these kind of things. Using SSDs in local servers or SSDs in central servers. But be aware of SSDs as well. Cost, endurance, IOPS versus capacity, IOPS versus gigabytes ratio are be aware of as well. To consolidate IOPS, look at Atlantis. Atlantis is here. Interesting solution. Consolidating IOPS and inline deduplication of storage and IOPS. When I have random IOPS, my disk can handle, for instance, 160 IOPS. When I have sequential IOPS, the same disk can handle maybe 500 IOPS. So there are storage systems and solutions, software and hardware, CUTech, for instance, and Versto. They are able to make sequential IOPS from random IOPS by buffering and caching it in some degree, and then sequential write all these IOPS to the disk. That is an option as well. NetApp, for instance, is doing it as well. Hot block auto-tiering uses memory, flash, fiber channel, SATA drives, and high-end storage solutions are options to use in VDI and storage. So I started with the 3 questions long time ago, around 20 minutes ago. I talked about the good, bad, and ugly. I talked about the bad and ugly. I talked a lot of time, quite some time around storage and VDI. I think it's important to understand it. That's why I spent quite some time on that. Now I want to close these chapters. Now I want to give you an overview of this VDI space, server-hosted space, client-side space, management space, and then we'll do a more deeper dive on the different vendors. So that's the goal for the other portion of this session. Why is it important to have an overview? Well, I think it's always good to have an overview around what is functionality, but also around vendors and their solutions. Most of the customers, they don't just pick one vendor because they like their blue eyes. They spend quite some time in investigating what is the best functionality, what is the best solution, what is the best vendor. And therefore the VDI Smackdown white paper and all the other white papers, that's the reason why I wrote these white papers. So having an overview is helpful in larger and smaller projects. Overview in a VDI space and in a server-hosted space, so an overview of the complete landscape. That's what I want to accomplish. Not to do a deep dive in all these vendors, but just giving you a sense which kind of vendors are in which position. So server-hosted VDI, as you can see, a lot of vendors. This has nothing to do with a magic quadrant of Gartner. Some people have thought, well, okay, so Oracle and Pano and Citrix are up there, so these are the best solutions. Well, it has nothing to do about best solutions. This is just an overview of the vendors in the server-hosted space. So Pano, Oracle, Citrix, Quest, Red Hat, Ericom, Cavisa, which is Citrix, Microsoft obvious, Propounce, Virtual Bridges, 2X, VMware. These are the vendors I see a lot or in some degree in the VDI space with my customers and outside PKR, outside our company. What solution is the best? Well, that's a complete different subject. That's not a goal of this picture. Just to give you a feeling around which kind of vendors are in this space. Client-side VDI, VMware, Local Mode, Citrix, Oracle, Parallels, Microsoft, Virtual Computer, Mako 5, Virtual Bridges again. You see these vendors on the client-side desktop virtualization portion. I mentioned earlier server-hosted, client-side. Client-side, type 1, type 2. These are the vendors on the client side. Could be type 1, could be type 2. Virtual Computer, Citrix bought Virtual Computer or has the intention to acquire Virtual Computer, and they announced it 2 weeks ago at Citrix Synergy. It's still a pretty small area when you look at the bare metal client hypervisors. I'm in the process of finishing, that sounds great, in the process of finishing a white paper, and the process is already, I think, two months away. So I'm not proceeding that well, but I'm in the process of writing and finishing a new Smackdown white paper called, Client-Hosted Virtualization Smackdown, which covers this space. It's a newer space, an interesting space as well, and I want to educate and inform and investigate myself what this space is all about. VDI management. VDI management is, there's a big space in management solutions. More user environment management, like Citrix is having, Mako 5 to some degree, RES, OneNova being acquired by VMware yesterday. OneNova, interesting solution as well. Good move from a VMware perspective. OneNova is layering technology and smart replication technology. And layering technology is smart in the VDI space, like Unidesk is doing as well. Immediate, profile management and growing to personalization and company app store, RingCube being acquired by Citrix, personal vDisk is RingCube. AppSense, also user environment management or user virtualization. Microsoft with user experience virtualization as their beta. Leostream as a broker. Triceret, Sense, and a lot of three vendors in the more investigation space. What is currently being used, and how can I use these numbers in calculating and using the right user perceived performance when using in production? So Liquid Labs, Stratosphere that's what we use in numerous VDI projects to make sure that our calculations and the user experience is what it should be. On the storage side, last slide from a landscape overview perspective, there are obviously a lot of storage vendors. There are the more traditional storage vendors, the obvious ones, HP, NetApp, Dell, EMC. And there are also storage vendors with focus on specific topics, like Atlantis, already mentioned, like V3 Systems, an appliance, a VDI appliance with compute and storage combined. Like Whiptail, an appliance with cheap MLC SSDs in their appliance, without the downsides of the cheap MLC SSDs. File in memory, Fusion IO, an interesting solution as well. Extreme IO, Zeotech. Interesting solutions when you understand the impact of VDI and storage. It is smart to understand what kind of vendors are in this space, what are the current vendors I'm using today, and what fits in to solve VDI and storage. Is that a point solution? A point solution, for instance, with Fusion IO in a specific server, or a point solution as an appliance like Whiptail is offering, or do I want to integrate my VDI in my current or updated storage platform? These are our main topics in that kind of discussion. Around storage, I finished a draft around the flash-based storage solutions. It's not really a Smackdown like the other white papers, but when you're interested in the storage space, and especially the flash-based storage space, then just send me an email. I'm happy to share that draft with you. And when you wait a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, you will find that white paper obvious on brianmaddeners.com as well. But that's more focused on the storage flash space. This is a strange picture a couple of years ago, when I didn't have kids and have enough time to do some sports in my dreams. This is the first, one of my friends, he is very good in photoshopping, so that's his profession. That's always good. This is where the Smackdown your desktop picture came from a couple of years ago. So Brian asked the presenters, okay, make funny pictures of you and send them over to me. And I'm a pretty serious guy, so I couldn't find any funny pictures. So I asked one of my friends, can you make a funny picture of me? And this was his result. I'm using this kind of pictures in Smackdown arena. Which product is the best? Well, that's a question I get quite often with customers. Customers or potential customers, they find the Smackdown white papers interesting. They ask PCAR, or they ask me as a person, can you help us in a day to explain what the VDI space is all about? Well, I start using this presentation. I have more and more time, so I can use more time in a more deep dive and have a discussion with the customer. That's all obvious in a consulting space. I had, I think, a handful of customers just simple asking, Ruben, okay, you have, for instance, 6 hours or 4 hours, explain us everything, sucking all your knowledge in that time frame. Oh, that's okay. And after that time, they will ask me, what is the best solution for us? Well, that's an obvious question. And my first reaction is, okay, yeah, I have no clue. And you don't have no clue. What's wrong with you? You know this space, so what's the reason you don't have any clue? Well, it depends, and that's an irritating answer, to be honest, but it depends on the requirements they have. That's obvious. So how to make a decision easy, and this is exactly what I've done a couple of times at these customers. I used just a coin, and I flipped a coin, and I said, okay, this will be VDI with VMware View, this will be VDI with XenDesktop, and we let the coin decide. And they thought, well, I'm not sure how much mojito he had last night, but I'm not sure if that's the right approach. So I, again, asked them, okay, what are your requirements? Yeah, we are just finding out, and we didn't write down the requirements. Okay, then this is the best approach. And then they understood that, okay, maybe it's smart to discuss internally what our requirements are, because with these requirements, I can make decisions. Without any requirements and just sharing knowledge, I cannot make any decisions, and I will use this. So be aware of requirements, and this is another way around to explain that requirements are important. I wrote down in the VDI Smackdown around 30 questions which will help in finding out these requirements. Well, I can, but I didn't write down the answers on these questions because that's my job. And this white paper is for free, so there needs to be some balance in what you give for free and what kind of information is still yours. But that's when you have specific questions, I will answer these specific questions for you. That's no problem. So again, we will go to the Smackdown portion, the vendor head-to-head comparison portion of this presentation. What kind of vendor is the best? We'll use a coin when you don't have any requirements. So the goal in the VDI Smackdown portion, the vendor portion, is not to find out the best solution. I just want to inform you from my personal perspective what are the pros and cons of the different solutions. That is my goal in this last topic of this presentation. I have around 30 minutes, and that's the time I also need for these 5 vendors and more a deep dive or a deeper dive on these vendors. I won't pick all these topics, but we'll see how it works from a time perspective. So Citrix XenDesktop 5.6 Feature Pack 1, sorry, could be fun, but Feature Pack 1 is not released yet. Feature Pack 1 is not released yet, but the information I inserted in these slides is the information I received while watching the keynote. I couldn't make it to Citrix Synergy this year. That's a pity. But the reason, well, is celebrating the birthday of my daughter, and there's one rule, and rule 1 applied during larger events, birthday of kids or wife. That's rule 1, and rule 1 applied, so I couldn't make it to Citrix Synergy. But with streaming solutions, it's pretty awesome to watch the keynote in your pajamas from the Netherlands and writing down this kind of information. So that's what I've done. XenDesktop 5.6 Feature Pack 1. So Citrix focused. I think their vision and also their strategic companies they acquired or tried to acquire, I think that is from my perspective, is a compelling story. I think they have a compelling story around follow me data, follow me application, mobile application management. Brian mentioned that as well. They are heavily investing in that space as well. So I think the story and the vision and the strategy around acquisitions is strong from a Citrix perspective. Not specific XenDesktop. XenDesktop is a portion of that. The relationship with Microsoft is strong. And what is SMNT? Sales, Marketing, and Technology. And there are some, be aware of that. That's why I mentioned this as well. I see a very, very strong relation from a sales and marketing perspective. And I see a relation from a technology perspective. So again, I see a very strong relation with Microsoft from a sales and marketing perspective, and an interesting relation from a technology perspective. I think there could be a much deeper integration from technology perspective, but I understand their position, and they're working hard, and they're achieving goals as well. But V-Alliance is, from my perspective, mostly sales and marketing, and it works from a partner perspective, from a customer perspective. And there's also technology involved. like integrating Citrix solutions with System Center, integrating Citrix solution with Hyper-V, writing down reference architectures, these kind of things. But there's, to be honest, I think there's also some room for improvements. That's what I found out in practice. That's why the T is a little bit smaller. Good from Citrix is choice. FlexCast is their marketing message around choice. Client-side solutions, server-hosted solutions, various server-hosted solutions, XenDesktop, XenApp, VDI in a box, XenClient. I think choice is always good, but making the right choice is, well, it's part of the flipping the coin or writing down the requirements. Image management, there's choice in image management from a XenDesktop perspective. Provision services, machine creation services, both have their pros and cons. Sometimes challenging to find out these pros and cons in specific for a customer, because it also depends on the storage side, it also depends on the hypervisor side, and these things combined together, well, make certain directions. For instance, a larger customer, they are interested in using Hyper-V, but Hyper-V, combining Hyper-V with provision services, and this customer has around 4,000 concurrent users. PVS and Hyper-V works, but Hyper-V, to boot from a PVS image, I need a legacy network card inside the VM, besides of the synthetic card, which is a high performance. So the combination of PVS and Hyper-V, well, it works. It works from a technical perspective, but from a design perspective, it's not, from my perspective, not the best solution. When you look at, for instance, the legacy network card and the synthetic network card. Remote desktop protocol, client-side rendered, server-host rendered, client-side rendered, like a redirection of certain content is interesting. Virtual infrastructure and management platform could be Citrix, could be Microsoft, could be VMware. I won't do a poll on this, but what I've seen in practice, what I've seen while talking with other people in the community, what I've seen talking with vendors, what I've seen talking with analysts, is that most of the customers using XenDesktop are using VMware vSphere as virtualization platform. That is what I've seen. Maybe my scope is limited, could be, but it's always tough to link numbers with this topic. But my feeling, so it's not benchmark numbers, but my feeling is that maybe 80% of the total XenDesktop workloads are running on VMware vSphere. 20% are running on Hyper-V and Xen server. That could be a number. That could be in a practical number in the area what I've seen. Most of my customers are using XenDesktop and vSphere. I have no who's using XenDesktop and Hyper-V, or no customers with XenDesktop and Hyper-V. Exactly, that's what I thought. Who's using XenDesktop and Xen server? Exactly. And who's using XenDesktop and vSphere? Exactly. So that's my assumption in numbers. That's no, that's not. The cameraman doesn't see that. So later on in the recording, that's tough. But the numbers I mentioned, or the feeling I try to, bring over to you guys, is the same as you mentioned in raising your hands. And that's not bad or good or bad, but that's how it is. I think Citrix should be aware of their position, and they should, from my perspective, they should create features and functionality which embrace XenDesktop on vSphere. Could be a lot of political discussions if they don't want to use that, they want to do that, but I think it is smart to do that from a VMware perspective. Other discussion. User experience and LAN and WAN scenarios, obvious, Citrix is very good at that. They understand that space. Sean Bass and Ben Atrich, they spent a lot of time in evaluating and testing remote and display protocols, remote FX, HCX, EUP, all these types of remote display protocols, and I'm not sure if they have a session today or tomorrow. I thought it was today, but I really embrace attending that session as well. User experience in 3D apps, HCX 3D Pro, and with Feature Pack 1 there are a lot of new stuff in HCX 3D Pro as well. I have currently 3 customers, larger customers, using HCX 3D Pro. Some are in production, some are evaluating in pilot. And one of the customers is a shipyard, and they have engineers in the Ukraine, for instance, or in Brazil. And their RP is, their intellectual property is inside, for instance, Autodesk Refit, 2D and 3D application. They want to bring that application to their engineering groups outside the safe country of the Netherlands. And they are using HDX 3D Pro with bladed workstations in some scenarios, and with Zen server and GPU pass-through in 2 other scenarios to bring graphical intense applications compressed heavily by the CUDA cores in their NVIDIA cards and bring it to, well, other locations with limited network connectivity. That is where HDX 3D Pro fits. When you look at this picture with desktop virtualization and server-hosted desktops on this side with 3 topics, there was personal physical desktop remoted to an endpoint, for instance in Ukraine. This is a scenario where the HDX 3D Pro fits in place. Other interesting positive things: application virtualization part of the platform. A lot of endpoint support is very good. VDI assessment software with the cooperation with Lakeside is included. SEVMM, I see a typo there. SEVMM 2012 support in feature pack 1, 5.6 actually. Personal vDisk, IntelliCache, Universal Print Server are new. Personal vDisk has, I think, to do with departmental apps and user install apps. I call it a more hybrid approach. From my perspective, it's still stateful, but managed differently, managed smarter. IntelliCache has everything to do with VDI in storage, and especially the read optimization of that portion. And Universal Print Server, not Universal Print Client, has everything to do with, well, how you'll handle print servers and their drivers. Last, I think 4 months ago, I had 3 customers with very strange issues with their HP Universal Printer software. Random lockups, strange behavior, tough to troubleshoot. Related after a couple of days, and in some cases a few weeks, find out that there are strange things in the HP Universal Print driver in combination with the XenApp, not specific XenDesktop. But Universal Print Server will solve these kind of issues as well. Quest has this kind of technology in place, and Citrix is the second company which will have Universal Print Server part of feature pack 1. Active community, handbooks, guides, reference architecture, huge part of the ecosystem, is all good about Citrix. Off topic, a little bit off topic. I think for the service providers, it is smart to position 2008 R2 with XenApp in a one-to-one relation to an end user. So every user will have his own 2008 R2 with XenApp solution as their quote-unquote VDI solution. Why? From a service provider license agreement, it makes sense. And end user is able to, well, install software or whatever. But it's still a server operating system. Be aware of that. But it is smart to position that. Other vendors, especially VMware, they don't have this kind of position. They don't have XenApp in a terminal server environment. So from a service provider perspective, this could be an interesting topic to investigate. So what is be aware of XenDesktop? Well, choice has its price. A lot of cases where you have discussion with customers around pricing. It's about functionality and then pricing, but that's more like that's a technical guy talking about pricing. No GPU sharing yet. So Zen server is GPU pass-through. There's a one-to-one relation between the VM and the GPU inside the server running Zen server. There's no GPU graphical processor unit sharing yet available. That will change when NVIDIA and or Intel will move. Brian wrote an interesting article, I think last week, around NVIDIA and VGX, but no GPU sharing yet from a VM hypervisor server perspective. Microsoft is doing GPU sharing, to be honest, but that's covered later on. VDI and EdgeSide. EdgeSide is their end-to-end performance monitoring solution. could be edge side as well. I've seen quite some issues with edge side in VDI from an I/O perspective. Be aware of the I/O impact adding edge side in VDI. I've seen adding edge side in the VDI space and just having a default installation will add 15 IOPS to the VM. And that's a quite high number when I mentioned 2.2 IOPS in one certain scenario of customers. Adding 15 IOPS just by adding edge side, well, will change the complete calculation of storage. And I'm okay with adding IOPS while adding functionality like edge side, but 15 IOPS can be trimmed down to 4 IOPS, for instance. But then the main question is, okay, what kind of functionality does edge side deliver when I'm trimming down edge side? So edge side is, be aware from my perspective, in a VDI scenario. When you look at all the time Citrix spends, don't forget hosted desktops in the cloud arena. Don't forget enterprises in the server-hosted arena. When I look at the keynote, and there's a lot of energy in there, and the vision and focus is profound, is awesome. But I think it's key for Citrix to understand there are a lot of enterprises as well which won't be service providers. And there are a lot of hosted desktops and a lot of interest for hosted desktops besides of moving forward to the cloud as a buzzword. So a lot of energy is spent in the cloud, but I think it is key to understand there are hosted desktops like XenDesktop or client-side desktops as well. And there are enterprises and a lot of enterprises besides of service providers as well. Of course, this is obvious. But when you look at the time they spend on these topics, I think it is good to keep these scenarios, enterprise scenarios as well, in mind. Execution, competition is ramping up fast. I see VMware especially moving rapidly. And that's a good thing from a customer perspective. I think it's a good thing from a system integrator perspective. Choice is always good. And in some degree, I think that the execution can be better from my perspective, my personal perspective. Personal vDisk, no image management. User environment management is limited to profile management currently. No integration between Xen Client and XenDesktop. No integration from an infrastructure perspective between XenDesktop and XenApp. So these are the main topics when you look at Citrix XenDesktop. I covered the pros and I covered the cons. Some are technology, some are more organizational topics. And I hope it will give you a clear view what my view on Citrix and XenDesktop is. Other topic is Microsoft. I have 15 minutes left. Will work, should work. Other topic is Microsoft, and maybe it's not fair, but I did it anyway. I used Windows 8 and Server 2012 in this deck, and it's always dangerous mentioning stuff when the software is not released yet. So be aware this can be changed in all different forms, but I think it is smart to understand what the direction Microsoft is heading to as well. Why? Simple answer, VDI in Windows 7 and VDI in Hyper-V 2 or 2000 R2 with the current version of RemoteFX is not that interesting. So that could be a very simple answer. There are use cases, but I doubt if there are larger customers using 2008 R2 with Windows 7 and RemoteFX currently today. So that's the reason why I picked RemoteFX in Windows Server 2012 and Windows 8 and wrote down my thoughts and my experiences in this topic. So Microsoft and VDI, well, what's good about it? Well, it's Microsoft. A lot of customers like that. They have a Microsoft first approach. Some other customers don't like that at all, and they are more anti-Microsoft. That is not part of this discussion. Both are happening in my space and my customers. But overall, I think it is a lot of customers find it a very good thing that Microsoft is playing a bigger and bigger role in the VDI space. I call it VDI version 2. Is it good enough? Well, we will find out. I think Microsoft has made a big improvements in a lot of areas in the VDI space, looking at Windows 8 and Windows Server 2012. You will see. You will find out why. RemoteFX is the first GPU sharing solution. So the GPU inside my server is being shared by multiple VMs, and this GPU handles the compression and encoding of RemoteFX and transporting through RDP to the endpoint. That is what RemoteFX is doing. The goal of RemoteFX with GPU sharing is to bring, well, they call it line of business applications, the applications I normally use on my desktop, to the endpoint in a VDI scenario. Not to bring Call of Duty, Autodesk Revit, these types of applications or games per se to the end user. Some can work, but that's not the goal, not the design goal of RemoteFX in this phase. Things can change, but for now, that's not the goal. RemoteFX Progressive Display, RemoteFX Media Encode, RemoteFX Over WAN, RemoteFX Touch, RemoteFX Metro are all covered this afternoon in my Windows 8 session. I will explain what it is and I will show how it works. But in essence, RemoteFX and WAN works awesome with a few hundred kilobyte bandwidth with 150 milliseconds latency. I've seen RemoteFX running, which is not possible at all with the current version of RemoteFX. So that will be a big improvement, which is needed for RemoteFX to have some influence in the customer side. The combination of Windows Server 2012, the version of Hyper-V on the platform, server message blocks 3, data deduplication, I think that combination is a very interesting combination in the VDI space. Streaming, quote, streaming your VMs, updating your VMs, deduplication, networking in Hyper-V, all things which are heavily improved in Windows Server 2012, which are needed as well in the VDI space. So from my perspective, that's a nice combination. Strong partnership with Citrix, look at S and M and T. Good partnership with Quest. Hyper-V getting much more mature and performs well. Well, the performance also from the 2008 R2 version is good. We found it out in Project VRC, nothing to complain about. But getting mature has everything to do with, well, the question how many people are using Hyper-V. Well, there are certain reasons why customers are sticking with VMware vSphere. Things will change in that direction. That's my expectations, and things will change heavily. I think Hyper-V will get a lot of interest early next year in just implementations of, I know a handful of customers within PCAR which will implement Hyper-V in 2012 version. And more mature is, for instance, networking and Hyper-V, or other features like data duplication, for instance. Integration with Universal Access Gateway is interesting as well, because their Universal Access Gateway will deliver remote desktops easier to endpoints. Question, what is the vision and focus of remote desktop services? Of course, the group has vision and focus, that's obvious. But Microsoft as a whole, I'm curious what their vision, their real vision is, not a marketing message, but their real vision is with VDI. Enterprise management, so RemoteFX is light years, big steps in RemoteFX functionality. Management, a big step in managing the environment, but for instance, image management and management in a large-scale deployment, I think there's still room for improvements, and that's always the mindset Microsoft takes, is building just good enough. And that's what I've seen. That's what I see in management as well. So Service Manager, that's what I will show and tell about in the other session. RemoteFX, Hyper-V only. Limited endpoint support. We will see if that will change. Other vendors like Ericom, they can help with that as well. But currently, limited endpoint support. Windows 8 will have the RDP client, which has touch support and all these kind of things. I hope, it's always tough to say that when it's recorded, but I hope things will change in that direction. We will see. We will find out in upcoming time. Yep, 10 minutes. So RemoteFX is not focused for CAD, CAM, high performance 3D applications. Keep that in mind. People think, well, this server has a GPU, so I can use whatever this GPU is able to offer. That is not true. There's a sort of virtualization inside the VM as well. When you look at the display driver, it is a RemoteFX, Microsoft RemoteFX, WDDM driver, not an NVIDIA blah blah blah, blah driver. So there, the capabilities of the graphical card is, I'm not sure if it's limited, but it is different compared to a pass-through of the GPU directly to the VM. Price tag, so adding GPUs or using CPU as an encoder and compressor has a price tag, CPU overhead or GPU overhead in a VM. Image management is one of those, first release actually of managing images, pooled images, updating images, these kind of things. Yes, it is available. Yes, it works in some degree, but when you look at, for instance, VMware View with their composer and rebalancing, and especially managing that environment, I think there's a big difference in these scenarios. Off topic, Universal Access Gateway, no iOS and no Android support. In their marketing slide, they mention, okay, you can use Universal Gateway with iOS and Android, which is true when you're using web applications. This is not a web application. Maybe the RD web page is a web application. Well, not maybe, that is completely true. But the RDP stream is not web. It's encapsulated in our HTTPS, but the Universal Access Gateway doesn't have a client for iOS or Android today. So I've seen a handful of customers think, well, Universal Access Gateway, Citrix support, check. But yes, Citrix support, check, when the Universal Access Gateway client is supported on the platform, which is not true in iOS or Android scenarios. Windows 8 RUCs, management okay, endpoint can be better, endpoint support. Will change with thin client, system on chip, will change with Windows Embedded 8 or whatever kind of name they will use. Is good when you're having a Windows 8 tablet or Windows 8 laptop. But for Mac support or, for instance, with iOS or Android support, we'll see how things will evolve in that space. I hope that it will evolve in that space. Other two vendors, Quest, good partnership with Microsoft. They have choice as well. Partnership with Mocha 5 as a client hypervisor. VDI assessment software included. Liquid Labs is being included in their stack. Very useful, especially in larger VDI implementations. Their user environment management solution stack is light, but it is available and it is useful as well. They are developing it as well. So the main question is, do we need RAS, Absence, or other UEM, full-blown UEM solutions when using Quest vWorkspace? Well, that's a good question. It depends on the requirements. But having this in place is a good thing. EUP, as Sean and Benny proved, works good in LAN and WAN scenarios. Good endpoint support, universal print server support. First step in delivering a Linux-based VDI solution. Not Linux as an endpoint, but Linux as a VM and remoting to that VM. I know two customers in the PKR space who have interest in this type of support. So yes, it's from my perspective a niche market, but well, there is a market for that. Hypercache, everything to do with VDI and storage, and optimizing the read IOs or caching the read IOs from a hypervisor level. So they're using Hyper-V, just a check mark, enable hypercache, and they have interesting technology to cache stuff in memory, which will be helpful in boot storms, which will be helpful in logon storms, and also starting applications, because these are all read IOs. And hyper-deploy is easy deploying VMs. VMs are being started without just copying the complete stack of data to the machine. Direct Hyper-V support, and no SCVMM needed to just create a complete VDI stack. And that can be beneficial from a financial perspective. From a technology perspective, from a technology perspective, they are ramping up fast. From an organization perspective, I doubt if they are ramping up fast enough cope with the competition. But that's my personal thing to Quest. So focus and ability to execute as a company. Quest as a company is a huge company. That is a downside from my perspective. I think a lot of people find it confusing. What is Quest? What is the vision and focus of Quest? Well, it helps when they are focused to the vWorkspace or user virtualization space. How does the future look like? Well, that's always an interesting question, but how does the future look like from a Quest perspective? Just read some material around what Quest is doing from an investment and investment space. I think there's some movement in that area, and how that will evolve during time. Yeah, we'll see. I'm skeptical in that area. I think things need to change, and this could be one direction where things are changing. But the main question is how much time does it take to change, and what is the competition doing in that same time period? That's what from a more political answer, try to say. Now, integration between client-side and server-hosted is one of the things is lacking currently. So Mocha 5 is part of their suite, it's a different license, but currently there is no technical integration between Mocha 5 or Quest Mocha 5 suite and their vWorkspace suite today. End-to-end monitoring is not available. Integration with system management, they are evolving heavily in that space. User experience, no 3D application support. Reference architectures, also community forums, yes, they are available, but compared to the others, and especially Citrix and VMware, I think the two other companies are doing a better job in that space. View 5.1, 5 minutes, should work. VMware, well, as you've seen from your raising your hands, VMware is a solid name in the virtualization space. It is VMware. It makes sense for a lot of customers. A lot of customers are using VMware in a data center. Yes, vision and communication is clear. But that started since 5.0 from my perspective. So I think it's a good thing. Application virtualization, ThinApp, is part of the stack and works pretty well. Image management is easy and strong. I think that is the solution as a whole is an easy or easier solution compared to the others, to be honest. That's what I found with customers. And easy doesn't mean the others are bad, but easier to implement and easier to maintain, or easy to maintain or implement. That is the differentiation I want to make. PC over IP is doing well in LAN and WAN scenarios. Check Sean and Benny's session. USB redirection support is 5.1. View composer array integration, so using the snapshot functionality from a storage vendor perspective, is part of 5.1. Virtual storage accelerator or content-based read cache. Read cache, yes, read cache, not write cache, but content-based read cache is part of the solution as well and helps in the discussion around VDI and storage. Be aware, impact of PC over IP or all server-hosted remote display protocols will have impact on server side, on scaling and performance. Will give great user experience, but will have impact on CPU side, for instance. No image layering technology. Well, that was until 11 o'clock yesterday evening. They bought OneOver, and OneOver is doing two things: image layering and smart distribution of images to all types of endpoints. And I think it's a smart move from VMware to buy OneOver. And another single, Dan mentioned that as well in the coffee drink this morning. VMware is all about post-PC era. Everything is post-PC era. But they spent, I'm not sure how much money, but they spent merger and acquisition money in pre-PC era stuff, in our world today. And that's a good thing, because we need to build stuff today as well, not only looking forward what is tomorrow, what's next. I think it's a very good move from VMware to buy OneOver and to handle image management, for instance, in the VDI space. Secure access solutions, bringing PC over IP to devices via secure access is, well, sometimes challenging. Opening ports could be challenging. So having a VPN solution for PC over IP, I think, it works, but I think it is challenging in certain scenarios. So be aware of delivering VDI workstations over PC over IP through a gateway functionality. And the last one, you see I will ramp up. Kavisa, pros and cons. In essence, the essence of Kavisa is easy, easy, easy. That's the benefit of Kavisa. I've implemented in my own lab. I don't have any customers using Kavisa in our space. I've implemented, and it is straightforward and easy. The downside, what I've seen is, okay, is it too easy when you look at troubleshooting? And I see quite some discussion. Okay, what do I use? Do I use XenDesktop? Do I use Kavisa? Is there a migration path? Well, these are tougher questions. So yes, a lot of things are good about Kavisa, or VDI in the box. That's the official name. But I don't see a lot of movement with that space. Just from a curiosity perspective, how many people are using Kavisa or have customers using VDI in the box? One? Yeah, so that's my feeling as well. Or maybe you can use a Rebel after 75 minutes of drinking the fire hose. Could be. I don't have any Red Bull with me, but I created an email called VDI Red Bull. When you're interested in a lot of articles I mentioned, send me an email, rsp@pqr.nl, with subject VDI Red Bull, and I will respond to that in this weekend or maybe early next week with my just simple overview of different articles I mentioned from myself or other people in the community. And it will save you quite some time in just searching around what types of articles are interesting. So rsp@pqr.nl, subject VDI Red Bull, and then I know what kind of Red Bull you're interested in. Hope you can drink some caffeine or Red Bull coffee, we'll see. Hope you enjoyed this session. I understand it is an information overload. Well, that was my goal, so hopefully it worked. And I hope you have an enjoyable day, and thanks for your time.
Thanks very much, Ruben.